Hey everybody, this is Kemp from CreativeCashFlow.com. Today we're going to be learning how to use the 10B2 financial calculator. Okay, the 10B2 is a phenomenal tool. This is an app that you should download on either the Google Play Store or iTunes. This is the app logo that you're looking for right here. Okay, this is the specific app that I'm going to be using. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of different financial calculators, but just for the sake of consistency, and I've played with a bunch of them, finding one that I actually like. I like this one a lot, okay? So it's the 10B2 financial calculator. It's $5.99, right? A lot of times I do come into this and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna show you how to buy houses without any money, and you're gonna have to spend a little bit of money, okay? It's $5.99, but it's the lifeblood of your business. Nothing is going to help you more than being able to run numbers on this calculator and prove out what you need to buy, how you can run the acquisitions. I mean, it's just perfect for that. Practice, practice, practice. It's gonna take lots of practice to get where you need to be on this calculator, but that's okay. But what I want you to do is after we get done with this, I want you to sit down with a piece of paper and just literally write out some scenarios, right? $100,000 loan, 9% interest, 30 years, what's my payment? My payment's $700, I've got a 4% interest, and I just want you to literally write some stuff down, figure it out on your calculator, until you're at a point where you just consider this to be second nature, okay? Because here's the thing, is that I will be on the phone in the middle of a conversation with one of my sellers, while I may have them on speakerphone or I may have them on a Bluetooth, and I'm running numbers. I'm just just blowing away at it. And to them, it's just me having a conversation, and I just happen to sound really smart because I'm like, oh yeah, I can give you this for this and blah, blah, blah. But really what's happening in the background is I'm running like 20 different calculations while holding a conversation, and that's where I want you guys to be, okay? But in order to get to that point, obviously you got to start somewhere. You got to learn how to use the calculator in the first place. So at this point in time, you should be able to see the calculator. I've got it listed up, or I've got it thrown up here. This is what it looks like. Now, I'm going to be sympathetic with you. It looks intimidating. There's a lot of buttons to push. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But the nice thing about what we're dealing with here is we only care about this top row. That top row is all we care about, okay? We got 5 buttons. Now, that said, I mean, obviously we need to put our numbers in, right? So I'm not counting those. But as far as like the craziness, the stuff that's intimidating to you, it's only those 5 buttons. We've got N, I/YR, PV, PMT, and FV. Okay, so I'm going to start from left to right, and I'm going to explain to you which each one of these buttons do, and then we're going to get in there and we're going to start calculating some things and showing you how this stuff runs. So N is our first thing to worry about here. N stands for number of payments. Okay, so if you have a 30-year note, you have 360 payments in that mortgage. Okay, if you have a 20-year, you have 240 payments. So if you're doing a 30-year, I don't want you to put in 30 right there. I want you to put in 360, right? So that's N, number of payments. I/YR. One of the reasons why I prefer this calculator over some of the other ones of other options that are out there is that you're able to just type in straight up what the interest rate is that you're dealing with. Okay? If you have a 4% interest or a 9% interest or whatever that is, you're going to type in 4 or 9 and put it there. Some of the other calculators are going to require that you annualize that. In other words, you're going to have to divide that out by 12 before you can get a proper solution. The 12B or the 12C being one of those. And I've got a 12C, the little physical thing, but having this app is just much nicer. So I/YR, that's interest per year. PV. Now in technical straight terms, on a financial calculator, the PV stands for present value. What I'm going to do is I'm going to refer to this as principal value. Principal value is just a little bit easier for us to understand in the real estate world because we're talking about what is the loan balance going to be. We have always heard that as principal, so I'm just going to interchange those words. But in case you're ever talking to some financial calculator snob out there at your next dinner party, present value is technically what it's called. PMT, I bet you can guess what that one is. Payment. Okay, PMT is your payment. That's going to be what the payment of the loan is. And what I want to point out to you is that the payment is always negative. I'm going to say that again. The payment is always negative. Say that to this camera. The payment is always negative. And I want you to repeat after me. The payment is always negative. I guarantee you, even though I just said that like 20 times and made you say it in your mind, even though you're probably not obeying my instructions and saying it out loud, the payment is always negative. If you run into a problem, which you're going to do, you're going to hit some kind of snag sometime down the road and you're running calculations and you're like, oh my gosh, this doesn't make sense. There's no way that this is the right answer. The first thing that I want you to check is the first thing I want you to look at is to see if your payment is negative. 99% of the time, the problems that you're going to run into getting used to this calculator are going to be because you put in a payment as a positive number. And to make a long story short, payments in this scenario are outgoing. It's a financial calculator. This is money that's going out. That's why it's a negative payment, right? Here's the beautiful part, the FV. FV stands for final value, okay? Now, final value is a nice one for us because we're always doing fully amortized loans. A fully amortized loan means that we're doing a loan that's going to have equal payments over a set amount of time, and then at the end of that amount of time, we're going to owe zero to the loan. That's a fully amortized loan. The other option, other than a fully amortized loan, would be something called a balloon payment. And I'm sure you've heard about those before, but a balloon payment says, okay, so we're going to run this calculation as though you're going to pay me for 30 years. So that makes your payment a lot lower, right? So we're going to run the calculation as though you're going to pay me for 30 years, but then 5 years into your loan, whatever the principal balance is that's due at that point in time, you're going to have to pay that entire balance off to your lender flat out. That's a balloon. That might be a situation where you would use FV as something else. However, for our purposes, for what we're doing in this world, you're just not going to have to touch that button, which is really nice because we're always leaving that one as zero, right? So the way that this calculator works is that we've got 5 buttons up here, okay? We've got the N, the I/YR, the PV, the PMT, and the FV. The way it works is we're going to put in 4 of those items and the calculator is going to solve for our 5th item. That is how this works. So let's start taking a look, okay? Now, hopefully you've gone out, you've downloaded this calculator so that you can work along with me. If not, just save this video off, come back later whenever you've got it, but we're gonna be working off of this for now. So let's take an example situation. Let's say that we've got a loan that's $100,000, that's at 9.5%, and it's gonna be for 30 years. And we wanna know what that payment is. This is going to be a very typical type of loan that we might give to one of our owner finance buyers, somebody that's buying a property from us, okay? Just to be clear, I'm going to use a consistent phraseology here. If I say buyer, I'm talking about the person buying a property from us. If I say seller, I'm talking about the person selling a property to us, okay? It's always in relation to who we are. We're just the investor, or you, right? So we're going to sell it to our buyer at $100,000, 9.5%, 30 years. So let's work our way from left to right. Let's work our way in. What is in going to be? Well, I just said it's a 30-year note, right? So we're going to put in 360 for 360 months, and we're going to tap the N button. Notice that I typed the number in first, and then I hit the N button. What's happening is you're telling it what you're going to want it to be, and then you're telling it what place to populate that number in, right? So I typed in 360, I populated it into N. Here's a little tip for you. Let's take that same scenario, but let's say that it's going to be a loan for 25 years. I don't know how many months 25 years is. This is one of the cool things about the 10B2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do 25 times 12 equals 300. It's 300 payments. I'm just going to hit N, and now I have populated 300 into my N field, okay? Whatever the populated value is for that field is going to be located directly above the field. So we hit N, and now 300, it says 300 right above it. I/YR. What interest rate did I say we were going to charge? 9.5%. So we're going to type 9.5, and we're going to hit I/YR. Okay? Now we've populated. You can see N says 300, I/YR says 9.5. What's our PV, our principal value in this deal? I said was going to be $100,000. So 100,000, we populate to PV. FV stays the same at 0. That's the beautiful thing about FV for us. And we need to solve for payment. So now we're not going to type anything in. We're just going to hit the payment button. And that tells us what our payment would be. So on this loan, a 300-month loan at 9.5%, $100,000, our payment would be $873.70. Okay? It's a beautiful, beautiful calculator, the way that this works. So one of the cool things about this is that if you need to change an item on it, you don't actually have to do very much other than change that item. So we just ran this. I changed my initial scenario, right? Initially, I said it was going to be a 360-month loan, a 30-year loan. But then I reduced that down to 25 years, right? So what we're going to do is figure out the 30-year version. Well, to do that, I just have to type in how many payments is 30 years. So let's act like I don't know it's 360. So I'm going to do 12 times 30 equals 360. Then I'm going to populate that into my in field. Well, if I change one item here, right? Because we solved for this a second ago. Everything that we saw at the top row, that was what the answer was, right? But I changed one of those numbers. If you change one of these numbers, one of the other numbers has to change as well. There's always a relationship happening, because right now this doesn't make sense. I solved the payment was $873 for a 300-month payment. But if we're going to do 360 months, that's going to be a different payment, or it's going to be a different interest rate, or that's going to be a different principal value, right? Because we're putting 4 items in, and we're solving for the 5th. So if my question that I had at this point in time is, how does that affect my payment? If my question that I had was, okay, I just found out what a 25-year payment is, what if it's 30 years payment? I put in 30 years in the end, and I'm going to go back to my payment button, and I'm going to hit it. I'm going to solve it. Now, my payment is actually $840.85. So that took away about 33 bucks. Okay? It's going to be an $873 payment a month if you're paying for 25 years, or it's going to be an $840 payment a month if you're paying for 30 years. The way that this is going to go is that you're going to change numbers constantly in this, okay? I suggest you go and you look at our backing into the deal video. The backing into the deal video does a little bit of work on the calculator here where it kind of shows you what's going to happen when you need to get creative about something and you need to use the calculator and stay within the means of a real loan, but you're going to change one item and see how that affects another, and you're going to change this item and see how that affects that. And there's always this relationship between the two. So right here, we've just changed the number of payments and seen how that affected the payment itself. But here's another question, right? Let's say, for example, that we have a loan, it's a $100,000 loan that needs to get paid off. Actually, you know what? I'm going to scrap the board on that. Let's say that we're acquiring a property. Right? And I'm going to kind of use the examples that we were looking at on the backing into the deal video, kind of expound on that. Let's say that we're acquiring a property, and our seller wants $85,000 for us. So we're going to say $85,000 is our principal value. That's our PV, $85,000. We know that that's the loan amount because we want to pay our seller in installments. We don't want to have to reach into our pockets and grab out a bunch of money and pay it to him. So we're going to put $85,000 into our PV. And we're going to back into the deal, and we're going to figure out that we have $600 a month that's possible for us to spend on buying this property. In other words, once we look at what we can sell it for, once we back out all our expenses, once we back out our expected cash flow, we're left over with $600 a month to play with. So we're going to put in $600 as our payment. So I'm going to type in $600. I'm going to make it negative by pushing the plus minus button that's above the blue button, okay? So you see the blue button on your side row, we're gonna push that plus minus button, see how that has made my payment negative, because why? Because the payment is always negative. And then, once I've made it negative, I'm gonna hit payment, and I'm gonna populate that. So now I know I've got a payment of $600 a month, I'm gonna pay $85,000, and then we've got to decide in or I/YR. What's the next one that we're going to attack? What's the next thing that we're going to do? You can watch our knowns and unknowns video to kind of get an idea of the stair step that you take in taking these negotiations, and it's going to be the same kind of stair step that you take in trying to figure out when you're attacking something like this, when you're backing into a deal. But we know that we're paying her $85,000. We know that we're paying her $85,000 at $600 a month, but we don't know what interest rate we're paying her, and we don't know for how long we're going to pay it. So one of the things that I first might attack is say, okay, if I'm acquiring this property for $85,000 and I'm paying her $600 a month, right? What am I going to do with it when I sell it? I'm going to sell it with owner financing on a 30-year note at maybe 9.5% interest, right, for a little bit more money. But what that points out to me is that I've got 30 years of income coming in on that backside, right? So to shape my acquisition price, I'm going to mimic that same term. My buyer is giving me 30 years. So I'm going to give my seller 30 years of payments. I would not want to go more than 30 years on my seller because then there's going to be a point in time where I'm not making any money and I still have to pay money, right? So that's going to be the first thing that I attack. I'm going to say, okay, 30 years, 360 into N. So how much interest would that mean I'm paying? That would mean I'm paying our seller 7.6% interest. Well, can I do that? Absolutely. Totally can. Do I want to do that? Heck no. There's no way I want to pay 7.6% to a seller, right? I'm typically in that 4.5% range or lower. There's a lot of times that I get it at a 0% interest rate. And you can watch our negotiation videos to talk about the hairy arm principle and how that helps you get 0% loans from your seller on acquisitions. But for now, let's just look straight up at the numbers. I want to offer her 4.5%. I don't want to offer her 7.6%. So what am I going to do? I'm going to change that 7.6 to 4.5. So I'm going to type in 4.5. I'm going to populate that to I/YR. And remember, if you change one item, that's going to affect another item, right? So what is that going to affect? Do we want to say because I'm paying her less interest, that means I can still pay the same amount every month and pay it off more quickly? Or do we want to say because I'm paying her less interest, that means I can pay her for the same amount of time and not pay her as much on a monthly basis, right? Both options are available to us right now. As a matter of fact, we could even use these same numbers that you're looking at on your screen, and we could even say, okay, I'm going to pay her $600, excuse me, $600 at 4.5% for 30 years, and because of that, I'm not going to be paying her the full $85,000. But first, what we're going to do today is we're going to see how, now that I've changed that interest from 7.6 down to 4.5, we're going to see how much that means my payment would be, right? I'm going to retain paying her for 30 years. I'm going to retain paying her $85,000. I'm going to retain paying her 4.5% interest, and I'm going to solve for payment. That's $430. So by changing down from 7.6 to 4.5% interest, that means that our payment to her would no longer need to be $600, which through backing into the deal we found we were able to afford. Our payment would be $430. Well, when I backed into the deal, I said that I wanted to keep $150 worth of cash flow, and that's what allowed me to get to that $600. Well, I just opened up another $170, right? So you add that together, and now you've got a $320 cash flow, whereas before you were willing to go away with $150. This calculator just made you $150 more dollars or $170 more dollars every month. But let's go back. Let's say, okay, you know what? I want to get this thing paid off as quickly as possible. Fast as I can get it paid off, right? So originally, when we backed into the deal, we said that we wanted to retain $150 as cash flow, and then we were going to pay her $600 a month, right? $150 goes to me, $600 goes to her. If I want to pay this loan off as fast as humanly possible, what I'm going to do is I'm going to not collect cash flow. That now means that we have $750 to pay her on a monthly basis to get this loan bought down. So let's look at what would happen there. If we do $750, we turn it negative, we populate it to payment, right? We know that our payment's going to be $750. That's the most we can afford. We know that our PV is going to be $85,000. There's absolutely no way that she's going to accept less than $85,000. We've tried. We used all the tricks, everything that we knew from the negotiation videos that we've watched, right? Can't get her below 85. But guess what? Maybe she doesn't care about interest. Maybe she only cares about how quickly she's going to get paid off, right? So I'm not going to pay interest. I'm going to put 0 in, and I'm going to populate that to I/YR. So I've kind of worked from the right to the left, and now at this point, I need to solve for the number of payments. How quickly can I get her paid off? Well, if I do it like that, if I give her all of my cash flow to pay off that $85,000, I'm going to pay her off at 113 months. 113 months. How many years is that? Okay, let's say divide by 12 equals 9.44. Okay, so in under 10 years, we will pay this person off entirely. Might I do that deal? Maybe. I'm not making any cash flow, right? This is going to be a break of my rule of thumb. Watch our rule of thumb videos to watch and figure out how you're going to use those as decision factors and how sometimes you're going to break your rule of thumb. I want $150 minimum. I'm not getting that, right? But what I am getting is a non-recourse private loan that in this case, if it was a free and clear property I'm making the offer on, in this case, doesn't have a due on sale clause, that's valuable to me. Maybe I'm okay with not accepting cash flow for the next 10 years because what happens after that 10-year period is done? Now you've got a house that you own free and clear. Now, if you had sold it and you were expecting $750 was all, you've been paying them $750 a month, every month for 10 years, well, now that's gone. Now that cash flow goes to you. Now you're making $750 every month for the rest of the loan period. Let's say that you sold it on a 30-year note to your buyer. Well, what's 750? Actually, let's back up a little bit. They're on a 30-year note, right? So that's 360 payments. The first 113 of those payments are all going to your seller. That's another way to interpret this, right? Because we have a number of payments to your seller of 113. So 360 are coming in, 113 of those are going straight to your seller. So I'm going to say 360 minus 113. That means that there's going to be a period with my buyer of 247 months where I'm pulling in $750 a month. So what's 247 times 750? $185,000 in net profits, right? So we were able to just figure out how we could make an offer to our seller, how we could get her paid off super quickly. I say super quickly, within 10 years. And then at that point in time, what's 750 times 12? At that point in time, that's $9,000 of an annual raise that you got. How cool would it be if your boss walked into your office and said, hey, you know what? You were doing a really good job this week. I'm going to give you a $9,000 raise, right? Now, the cool thing about doing owner financing and using this calculator and figuring out how all of these things work is that every time you do a deal, you're getting this kind of raise. Every time. You might have to wait for it for a minute, but you're getting that raise. Here's one of the big benefits to using this calculator. Here's one of the big reasons I like using the app version rather than using an actual physical calculator. So let's run that scenario again. But let's say that we're going to pay her, or better yet, let's look at the interest that we're going to make from our buyer. Right, our buyer is going to buy the property from us. Let's say they've got a $90,000 loan, which means that they bought it for $100,000. They gave us a 10% down payment, and their loan was $90,000. I could type that in by saying it's a $100,000 sales price. They gave us a 10% down payment, so I can do times 0.9. That leaves over 90%. I'm going to populate that to my PV, my principal value. So they're going to pay us on a loan of $90,000. They're going to pay us 9.5% interest. That's the going rate. So I'm going to type in 9.5 and go into the I/YR. And they're going to pay it to us for 360 payments. That's 360 into the infield. We type in payment, or we solve for payment. That's $756.77 every month. Let's assume we own this house free and clear for a moment, right? Let's just play. They're paying us $756 every month. What I want you to do is I want you to hit this orange button, right? On the left-hand side, the orange button. See how everything kind of changed out to the orange letters that were on your calculator? The very top right one that used to say FV, now the focus is on amort. Go ahead and push that button. When you hit the amortization button, it is going to pull up an amortization schedule for you. This is one of the beautiful solutions to using this calculator because now, right in front of us, we're seeing that in interest alone, we would profit $182,434 in profit in interest alone. That's your net profit. So on a $90,000 note, you're actually pulling in $272,000. $272,437. It's a pretty good income coming in from that. Now again, time value of money factors into that, right? So you do have to be aware that it's $272,000 over 30 years. But regardless, it's a lot of money, even when you factor in time value of money. If you look beneath that, you're going to see principal, interest, balance. The left-hand column is number. That left-hand column is showing you each number payment, right? So your first payment of $756, if you look at that first field there, $44 is going towards principal, $712 is going towards interest. The way that amortized loans work is that everything is front-loaded. All your interest is front-loaded. You make your money up front from interest, right? As you scroll down, you will see, like let's go down to payment 120, which would be 10 years in. 10 years in, that loan has $113 going to principal, $643 going to interest. Click the top right button, which is the share button. Actually, on iPhones, I think it just says share. I can't remember. But we're going to click our share button. This is a way that you can print out the amortization table. The reason why I wanted you to look at that is let's zoom into that top right section that's right there. This is what an amortization table looks like, okay? Now, if you observe here, it's showing you the blue line is how much principal is being paid. The red line is how much interest is being paid in percentage terms. So again, you look at the front, the entire payment, 95% of that payment is going towards interest. As time goes on, you start to see that level cross and die down to where as time goes on, you're paying more principal towards that loan. It's beneficial to know this kind of information because when you're buying a subject to property, you may be buying a property sub 2 that's already 10 years into their note. And if they're 10 years into their note, that means that every payment that you make going forward is going to be going a lot more to principal than if you were buying it 1 year in. The reason why I bring this up is that if you're buying a house subject to, and watch our subject to video to learn a little bit more about how sub 2 works, but let's say you're buying a house that's sub 2, that they've had the underlying loan there for 10 years, and they owe 85 on it. And you sell it to a buyer for 110, well, your buyer is now right here at the beginning of this stage. Your buyer is where the 95% is going towards interest, right? So they're barely touching their principal. Meanwhile, you're 10 years in on your underlying note, and you're really shooting at that principal, right? So you may buy, and at the time of closing, you're owing 85 over here, they owe you 115. But a year from now, they may owe you 113, but you only owe 75 over here, right? You may have paid down $10,000 worth of principal here, and they may have only paid down 2 or 3 over here because you're at a different stage in this graph. You're at a stage on that underlying loan where you're paying off more and more of that actual principal. Not to mention your underlying loan is probably at 4.5%, 5, 6%. Their loan is at 6%, or is at 9.5%. So this calculator absolutely shows you everything that you need to know about the financing and how this deal is going to work. So what I want you to do, again, is I want you to sit down, draw out, just literally write out a scenario that says I've got $600, I need to pay $85,000, and I need to pay 4.5%, and then write another one that says, okay, I've got $400, $85,000, 6%. Okay, I've got $400, $85,000, and 9%. Just start playing with it. Solve for these things. Get used to using this calculator because this will make you the money. Okay? So continue to watch these series, continue to watch our other videos, make sure that you're understanding what's going on, rewatch, 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 but we are giving you all the information out there. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Follow us on Facebook so that you can get these videos as they're being released. Again, we're not pulling any punches, and we're really showing you all the deep and intimate details of where to get the real money in this business. All right, thanks.